What's just retribution as horror tales emerge, as Israel reels from the massacre of hundreds of civilians, the capture of hostages, the shattering of its aura of invincibility? There's the immediate reaction, and we've seen the call-up of an unprecedented 300,000 reservists, the shutdown of fuel and food to Gaza, the pounding of that Palestinian territory, and the potential prospect of a ground offensive. And that would come in one of the planet's most densely populated territories at a very high cost. How long a war? How many casualties? What endgame? If it's to eliminate Hamas, then to replace it with what? Israel left Gaza in 2005. Does it want to return? Most immediate is the cost to a civilian population there, already running low on drinking water and basic supplies. Right now, Israel has much of the world's sympathy. Is there an alternative, though, to a tooth for a tooth, eye for an eye policy? How to avoid squandering that sympathy, the way the post-9/11 United States squandered sympathy by invading Iraq? What's the right way to go about what lies ahead? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking, how far does Israel go? And joining us from Tel Aviv, Dor Harlap, consultant for the ruling Likud party. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you. Thank you
from
for
Ramallah, Mustafa BARGHOUTI, Secretary General of the Palestine National Initiative, member of the PLO's Central Committee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Chief International Affairs Editor Robert Parsons is with us here in the studio. How are things?
Good.
Your questions, your reactions on the hashtag F24debate. There is this feeling right now that it's about to get a lot worse. A lot of the focus has been this Tuesday on that border with Gaza, not yet entirely secured on the Israeli side. We have seen intense shelling of the southern city of Ashkelon, and with Gaza under lockdown and the Rafah border crossing with Egypt bombed 3 times in the past 24 hours, the situation there growing more dire. Lisa Kamenoff has that story.
In Gaza City, these survivors clamber their way through the rubble, desperate to get to safety but unsure where to go. Their neighborhood was just hit by an Israeli missile. Their home and everything they owned is now gone.
It's a terrifying thing, a frightening thing. People were killed inside their homes. It wasn't only 1 or 2 homes or 10 or 20. It was a large number of homes that were targeted.
In another part of the city, 3 residential buildings were given 10 minutes to evacuate their residents due to a coming airstrike. But seconds later, a missile hit without warning.
I believed that the bombing was headed in our direction. I looked around and realized that within seconds there was no building or children. My children were standing next to me. I was telling them to cross the street, and within seconds, they were gone.
Israeli warplanes continue to hammer the Gaza Strip in retaliation to Hamas's surprise attack on Israel on Saturday. According to the UN's humanitarian agency, over 180,000 Palestinians are taking refuge in United Nations shelters across the enclave. Other residents fled to the local Al-Shifa hospital, hoping they can avoid airstrikes there.
We were running from a car to a hospital to a street. One person told us we can stay with them. Then they got hit by an airstrike. Another person said the same thing, and then they got targeted. I'm in the street now. Tell me, where should I go?
The Strip remains blockaded by the Israeli army with no access to electricity, water nor gas, and food and fuel supplies completely cut off. NGOs located inside the enclave are providing medical treatment to residents, but their stocks are running low, prompting the World Health Organization to call for a humanitarian corridor into Gaza to help patients in desperate need of medical supplies.
And also joining our conversation, thank you for being with us, from the coastal town of Emek Hefer, Ruth WASSERMAN-LANDE, former member of the Israeli parliament. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
First off, your reaction to that call there for a humanitarian corridor out of Gaza.
You begin your article, your piece, your program with retaliation, yet I think that the beginning should be told from the beginning. What happened was on Saturday, on a Sabbath, on a festival, a Jewish festival of Simchat Torah, when a premeditated, very, very, very evil attack was made by Hamas operatives, not on the IDF and not on armed soldiers, but purposefully on civilian population. And a massacre occurred. Babies were killed, women, older women, men, children. Their parents were murdered in front of their faces. And all of this was happening while a barrage of rockets was falling on the heads of a civilian population. So I think in order to create the right context, one should begin with the beginning, and that was the beginning. Not for nothing, the entire world is not only devastated, I think that red lines have been crossed, but in a manner that's heinous. And why does the world know of what had happened? Because the operatives themselves had filmed unashamedly and unapologetically the raping of women, the beheading of people, I'm stressing unarmed civilian people. The villages that they entered, the kibbutzim that they entered, they are not army bases. There are living quarters of civilians. They also tortured and captured Thai and Chinese agricultural workers. Why? Where is the humanity in that? So when you ask, how do I make or what do I make of the Israeli response, I would like you, sir, to please show me one country in the whole entire world that would not retaliate in some way to this kind of, it's not even attack, it is a barbarism, a massacre, a carnage. There are no words to describe what has happened. No words.
Of course, the question was about trying to spare civilians going forward on both sides. Again, I repeat that question to you, and of course the whole world has been shocked, starting here in France, where the number of those killed has also risen in the past hours.
But I'm not sure that I understand the question.
The question is basically, we're entering now a point where there is this siege of Gaza taking place. And we've had in the last minutes the EU's chief of foreign policy, chief diplomat Joseph Borrell, saying Israel has the right to defend itself, but asking that there not be a total siege of Gaza, particularly for those most vulnerable.
So first of all, I would like to say that the 2.2 million Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip are indeed, in my humble opinion, hostages, but they are not hostages of Israel. They are hostages of a leadership which is not even a leadership, an inhumane and very, very cruel, interest-oriented, manipulative group of people that do not care for their people. They do not care for their people. We've seen since 2006, when the Hamas took over the Gaza Strip, none of the infrastructure being grown, no equal opportunities or distribution of employment opportunities or sustainable sources of income being built. Nothing put from the billions of dollars that have been conveyed to them, by the way, with the help of Israel from Qatar, put into growth, the economy, education for their people. No. They have been invested in building underground attack tunnels. They have been invested in rocket building, and the Iranians have very eagerly funded and trained and supported this dynamic. Not because the Iranians like the Palestinians, not because they want the better lives of Palestinians, but because they want hegemony, influence, impact on the region. So Hamas, which is Sunni and Iran is Shiite, is one tool in the Iranian box. The Hezbollah, Shiite, with very different and non-Palestinian interests in the north in Lebanon, is another manipulative tool in the hands of Iran, and so on. But the Palestinian people do not interest neither the leadership of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, nor the leadership of Iran. Again, if one can call both of those groups leaderships in any way.
All right, let me bring in
So
Mustafa
when you talk
Barghouti.
about siege-
Mustafa, do you agree that the citizens of Gaza are now held hostage by Hamas, as has been stated by Ruth WASSERMAN-LANDE?
Your guest is trying to dehumanize Palestinians totally. I hope you will give me
That
enough
is not
time
true.
to speak as
That is
don't interrupt
absolutely
me.
not
Please,
true.
one at a
I
time.
did
One
not
at a time.
interrupt you.
Sure.
No.
But that is
If she
just
will
not true.
interrupt me, then I don't need to speak. She can take the whole program and speak all the time. But if you want to give me equal opportunity,
Mustafa Barghouti.
then allow me to speak, please. First of all, I am against killing any civilian. I am well known for being an advocate of nonviolence all my life. I don't support killing Israeli or Palestinian civilians in any way. But what was described was only an act which all Israeli spokespersons have been trying to achieve during the last 3 days, which is to totally dehumanize Palestinians. To claim that people in Gaza, the 2.2 million people, are hostages to Hamas, while Israel is besieging Gaza, blocking access to food, blocking access to medications, blocking access to fuel, blocking access to electricity, to water. This is the worst kind of criminal behavior by a state that claims to be a democracy. The 2.2 million people are mainly civilian population that are deprived now from any chance of having decent life and having food and having medications. I've been receiving calls from patients all last night because they are unable to get medications for their treatment for cancer, for other diseases. Patients who have kidney failure who cannot have access to kidney dialysis. You tell me this is acceptable? Of course not. And more than that, they are now subjected to Israeli airstrikes that already took the lives of more than 750 people, including 140 children, including 105 women. As much as Israeli civilians are victims, and we don't want them to be victims, Palestinians in this case are also victims by airstrikes that are conducted by Israeli Air Force. The Israeli Air Force is now using, don't interrupt me, please. The Israeli Air Forces now are using white phosphorus, which is prohibited against the population of Gaza. You want to speak about the beginning? Let's go back 8 months ago. During the last 8 months, Israeli troops, army, and settlers killed 248 Palestinians in the West Bank, not in Gaza, in the West Bank, including 40 children, including a child I knew the family of who was only 2.5 years old. Atrocities were conducted everywhere against Palestinians. You want to go to the beginning? Let's go to the beginning of occupation 56 years ago, which has become the longest occupation in modern history. At that time, Hamas did not exist. 40 years ago, Hamas did not exist. 30 years ago, Hamas was not in charge. The Palestinians went and made peace with Israel through Oslo Agreement. What did they get? Netanyahu, who aggravated the Israeli public, and eventually led to the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin by an Israeli extremist because he signed a peace agreement. And then Netanyahu blocking all the roads to peace, and then announcing that his plan is to annex the occupied territories. And Netanyahu stood up. You want to know the causes? Look at the roots of the problem. Netanyahu stood 3 weeks ago in the United Nations carrying a map of Israel annexing West Bank, annexing Gaza Strip, which they claim they left, annexing the Golan Heights, and annexing East Jerusalem, which is a violation of international law. You are leaving Palestinians. You are leaving Palestinians with no hope whatsoever. You want to tell me that West Bank is a Jewish country, Jewish land, not Palestinian land now? You want to tell me that the whole of Palestine? Why are you interrupting me, please?
Listen to
Don't interrupt me. If you interrupt me, I will continue to interrupt you whenever you speak.
No problem.
Can you shut
I
up,
think
please?
we should
Can
have
you
a
shut up?
conversation.
Please,
not
one at a
lecture.
time. One at a time.
I would love to have a discussion with you, sir, and not a lecture.
But you are
welcome to
interfering with
one
what
at a
I am
time,
saying.
please. One at a
any
time.
question that
And
you
I
would
am
like.
not surprised.
And I want to bring in a moment Dor Harlap and Robert Parsons. Mustafa
No,
Barghouti.
but I am not surprised.
But I have
I'm not
to say a
surprised
word.
that
I have
you
to
keep
say a word
interrupting me
because the audience
because you are.
is being mixed
Look
up
at
with
that.
Fatah.
Please.
You are
And I
used
have to
to
tell you
oppressing
Please,
the
Ruth
Palestinians.
WASSERMAN-LANDE, please. One at a
And you
time.
are trying to oppress me and
lynched
prevent
by
me
the
from
Hamas.
saying my opinion.
You
shouldn't accept that.
All right.
Can you shut up and let me speak, please?
I think
Shut up.
it would be.
I think it is revealing what is happening now. It is revealing that the Israeli guest, as I have lived all my life under occupation, facing Israeli soldiers, Israeli officers, Israeli bureaucrats trying to oppress us. And now your guest is trying to oppress me, preventing me from telling my story, preventing me from telling my opinion. By doing that, you are exactly
you would know that I belong to the center and not to the right.
You are exactly exercising the behavior. You are exactly exercising the behavior of an oppressor and an occupier. And this should not happen. Please let her shut up. I can't speak if she speaks.
All right, I want to. All right, just
give me the right to finish my sentence, please. My sentence, okay? I can say.
If you would like to know,
please, Ruth WASSERMAN-LANDE, I have to ask you, please, to let Mustafa Barghouti finish. And then it'll be your turn. You are not interrupted. Please, Mustafa Barghouti, go ahead.
This is
exactly.
a very
Look at that
issue, but there needs to be a discussion here and not a lecture.
Give me the chance to speak like you spoke. You described a lot. Let me describe the facts that I know. By trying to interrupt me constantly, you are exactly behaving as an occupier and as an oppressor, and you can't do that. Let me tell you about the story of 8 Palestinian journalists who were just killed in Gaza. A journalist, his wife, all his 3 children, another woman journalist, her husband, all her family. Now, why do you erase Gaza down to earth? What is the responsibility of 2.2 million?
Asked me a question. No,
I'm not asking you. I'm not asking you. I'm asking Netanyahu. I'm asking Netanyahu. You are not in charge.
I don't belong to
2.2 million. 2.2 million Palestinians are now under siege, and they are bombarded from air. And I promise you, if you continue to do that, I will not let you speak in this program. Please shut up and let me finish.
Let me bring in Dor Harlap,
let me just allow me to say one
final sentence from Mustafa Barghouti, and then let's let the other panelists have a word. Go ahead, Mustafa Barghouti.
Okay, just one line. Let me say one line, and please ask her not to interrupt me. The problem is occupation. The problem is the system of apartheid that Israel has created. The problem is that Israelis are oppressing Palestinians. The way out of this is simple: to respect each other, to accept each other, to have equality, not to dehumanize Palestinians, but accept them as equal human beings. I think the way to that is to immediately have ceasefire, immediately de-escalate, prevent an invasion now of Gaza, a ground invasion, which could lead to another war in the north with Hezbollah, and immediately have peaceful talks and immediately have exchange of prisoners so that all Israelis that are held in Gaza can come back to their homes, and all Palestinian prisoners who are in Israeli jails would also be released, including a relative of mine who have been in jail for 44 years.
Let me bring in Dor Harlap now. Dor, what's your mindset when you look at the events that have happened last Saturday, and when you look at that, this is day 4 of the fighting.
Do you hear it? Do you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Good. So first of all, good evening and thank you for having me. Your guest here, BARGHOUTI, is just lying to the people of France. Okay, the Arabic terror against Jewish people has started not in the last few years and not 50 years ago or 60 years ago, but since almost 120 years here in the Middle East. And if you can see, every time that there was a fight between us and between the Arabs here, they started. They are the aggressors. They are the terrorists. Okay, if the Jews will let down their weapon, there will be no Jews. If the Arabs will let down their weapons, there will be peace. Now, specifically about the last 2 days, it's ridiculous to show and start even to think that there is an equivalency between prisoners in the Israeli prisons and people who got kidnapped from a party that they were partying on the last Saturday morning. The people who were partying are civilians who didn't do anything to harm anyone, and the prisoners that we have in the Israeli prisons are terrorists. Terrorists, even your relative, which is 44 years in our prison, he is a terrorist. He tried or did kill or plan to kill Israeli citizens. We don't deliberately try to hit kids. We try our best not to hit people who are not involved. That all the years, that's how we play. That's how we act, and we continue to act that way. Okay. So
let's talk about some of the facts here with you, Robert Parsons. We have a situation where we've seen barbaric acts with this surprise attack last Saturday, and then now comes the response that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, if we could go back to your original question, which still hasn't been answered by anybody, should a humanitarian corridor be allowed for the people of Gaza to get out? You know, we know what happened on Saturday and in the hours that followed was abhorrent by any standards. It was vile. The attacks on innocent children, women. Talk now of babies being executed, beheaded, that sort of thing. Whether that is stood up or not, we don't know yet. But the attack was vile. There are no words to describe it adequately. But, you know, collective punishment of the people of Gaza cannot be justified under any circumstances either. What is happening at the moment is appalling. And some provision has to be made to allow people to get out, to allow medicines to get into those people, to block medicines off to people, innocent people, no less innocent than the Israelis who have been victims of Hamas over the last few days, so that they should get succor as well. That has to be taken into account now.
I checked today with the Egyptian head of the intelligence, and there is a corridor for the Palestinians inside Gaza. I made sure.
Where is that corridor? Because the main Rafah crossing was bombed 3 times today.
I'm sorry?
Where is that corridor?
In the border between Egypt and Gaza. There is a corridor. It's open. It's open. Please do not disinform your audience.
I'm not sure you're right, actually. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the information I have is that there's a very limited crossing point.
Egyptians.
About 400 people can get through a day.
I'm sorry?
About 400, as far as I know, I may be wrong on this, but as far as I know, the only crossing point that's open into Egypt, about 400 people can get across into Egypt, back from Egypt a day, and that's the limit at the moment.
But this is not the usual issue. This is a special opening given the situation.
No, it's always like this. Always like this.
No,
let me please explain. May I explain? Because I am the one who crosses from that area.
On the Egyptian side, and I rechecked, this is disinforming your audience. There is a corridor. Plus, I remind the audience that water, electricity, gas has been given to the population of Palestine, despite the fact that Israel withdrew and is not the owner of this land anymore, but the Hamas is responsible.
But the defense minister said, the Israeli defense minister said he's cutting food and fuel.
And gas has been passed on. The Qataris have given money.
These are lies.
Hamas, billions of
You're
dollars.
lying bluntly.
Where are these billions that Qataris have
Can you please give me the chance to respond?
Where
I would like to
is the
respond
money?
also.
Mustafa
Where
Barghouti.
is the money, sir?
Please, let me explain, and
After
please
you
ask
told
your
me
guests
to
not
shut
to
up.
interrupt me. Yeah, please
I
don't
don't
interrupt
want to
me.
interrupt you,
Please,
but
please,
nobody
let's keep
tells
this a civil
anybody
conversation,
to shut
please.
up. I would never dare to tell you to shut up.
Mustafa Barghouti.
Unfortunately, I have to tell you the truth. The truth is that nothing can be allowed into Gaza now. Israeli establishment declared that if the Egyptians provide supplies into Gaza, they will bombard it. And actually, the Israeli airplanes bombarded the area between the Egyptian crossing and the Palestinian crossing in Rafah already 3 times. Nothing, anyhow, Rafah crossing is not a place through which neither food, nor medication, nor fuel, nor electricity can pass. It is blocked. It's only for human beings who can cross. And you are absolutely right. In ordinary times, it's no more than 400 people in each direction. And I personally had to go through that crossing because Israel does not allow me to go from West Bank to Gaza in 2 hours. I have to go to Jordan, fly to Egypt, and then cross through Rafah. So I know exactly what's happening there. At this very moment, Gaza is completely blocked. At this very moment, people don't have access to medications, to food, to electricity, and to water. And that kind of blockade on 2.2 million people is totally unacceptable, especially that these 2.2 million people are bombarded from air constantly and continuously. The chief of staff in Israel declared that they will not even warn people anymore. Practically, he declared that Israel is ready to commit war crimes. No crime in the world should justify another crime. It's not acceptable. And the fact that the population of Gaza live under these horrible conditions will only breed more violence. People are now stuck. And in addition to that, the main spokesperson of the Israeli army came out saying that all Palestinians in Gaza must leave to Egypt. This is a declaration of a plan of ethnic cleansing. These people, 70% of them have already been refugees because they were displaced from their homeland in what it is Israel today. They were displaced to Gaza in 1948. Now they are telling they have to be ethnically cleansed again into Egypt. This is so horrible and so unacceptable in the 21st century.
All right, let me ask Dor Harlap, because right now we're seeing this unprecedented mobilization, 300,000 reservists called up. What are the pitfalls of a ground invasion, as it seems as though it might be in the cards? What would a ground invasion entail? Would it be a limited ground invasion? What do you see as the possible scenarios?
Okay, before I'll address that, I would like to answer to your guest here, Mr. Barghouti. First of all, if you want medication, go to the hospital that you have made to be Hamas headquarters instead of using it as a normal hospital. If you want to have electricity,
no, I'm a medical person and I run medical operation there. I know very well what we have.
I didn't bother you. I didn't bother you. I'm not misleading you. Don't bother me when I answer.
I'm just telling you the response to your question.
Use the billions of.
Could we let's talk about what's going to happen next now, please?
Okay. Yes. So what's going to happen next? So first of all, we just see now that. Just a second. Okay. Wait. Just a second.
There we go.
No. Good. Yes. So in the future, first of all, it's important for everybody in the house will understand that Hamas is not a leadership that took over with no support from the people. The people in Gaza are supporting Hamas. In any polls.
My question is, what happens if there is a ground invasion?
I will explain. Okay, the people of Gaza are supporting Hamas, and also, it's very saddening to say that they also support these terror attacks against our civilians. So, as I see it, and I'm not a military expert, there should be pushing away the people from Gaza, okay, and to make sure that there is no any more terror cells in Gaza, okay? It's ridiculous to say that now every few meters that you will walk in Gaza, there will be death traps for our soldiers. So I would advise our leadership to wait with ground invasion and to continue with airstrikes and in a humanitarian way to push through the people from Gaza to Egypt. Yes, I believe this is a very good
You are advocating
solution.
ethnic cleansing. My
No,
goodness.
no.
You advocate
No,
ethnic
no.
cleansing of
Your-
Gaza.
Your
Are you
people
serious
killed-
about that?
Israel
I'm
No.
so
is
glad
not
that you are saying
advocating
this on
ethnic
air.
cleansing of
Let
Gaza.
people know now
Israel
what Israel
is
wants.
not
They want
advocating.
ethnic
All right,
cleansing
one
of
at a time,
Palestinian
please.
people.
One at a time. The Dov Harlap,
It was my
please.
turn to speak.
Amazing.
Yes.
This
Your
is really
people
amazing.
have
Dov
your
Harlap,
people have
very briefly. Go ahead.
yes, your people from Gaza, your people from Gaza have killed and headed and raped citizens in the last week with the full support from the people. So don't tell me anything about anything, okay? We deserve to live. We want peace, okay? And you won't tell us what to do when you behave like that.
All right,
okay?
we earlier spoke with former center-right Prime Minister Yair Lapid. He's now in the opposition, employing strong language when he spoke earlier with France 24's Mark Perlman.
The end game is there will be no Hamas in Gaza. Right now, what we're doing is we're eliminating, and we will eliminate even furthermore, all terror capabilities that Hamas have. By the end of it, probably my view would be that the Palestinian Authority should take over Gaza as it did before, but we don't know yet.
Palestinian Authority should take over. Ruth WASSERMAN-LANDE, you agree with Yair Lapid?
Absolutely, but we are not to decide who takes over Gaza, right? But let's notice what he did say. He did not say ethnic cleansing. We have nothing against the people. We have a problem with an evil, terrible, diabolical mechanism that is called Hamas. It's not a leadership, it's a terrorism cell that would eliminate Mr. Barghouti as well, because he's not of their kind, and he knows it. So when there was lynching of the Fatah, when they were running to the Israeli soldiers and the border to be saved because of the evil mechanisms of the Hamas, and we did save them. Why? Because there is a death machine, and the poor Palestinian that are inside, that's what I began and said in the beginning, they are also hostage of their own leadership. Not all of them support the Hamas, and not all of them want it, but they cannot say it, and they cannot really do anything about it. The incitement that goes on there is terrible, terrible. And no disinformation of your kind will shut me and the people that believe in real freedom, real values, real culture that some Palestinians have. And I'm proud to say it. We are not against Palestinians. We are against being murdered, massacred, raped. And we
Robert
will
Parsons,
not allow
Robert Parsons,
Hamas
let me bring you in on this. Looking ahead now.
Well, look, your question is about what happens next. What are the Israeli Defense Forces going to do? Clearly, the situation is immensely difficult for them at the moment. What has happened, as we were saying, in southern Israel over the last few days has been abhorrent. The people of Israel, the entire world, are shocked by what they have seen. Quite clearly, the Israeli government is under massive pressure to do something. At the same time as that, the Israeli Defense
innocent
Forces
people.
and intelligence services have suffered a pretty serious humiliation here. People are shocked in Israel by what's happened. Most people will have thought that this was not possible to happen in Israel, given the strength of the army and their intelligence services. People want to be reassured that the Israeli government, its defense forces, its intelligence services are on top of things. There is a demand for some sort of action to be taken. The problem, though, is what do you do?
Okay, can I answer that, please?
Okay, go on.
May I?
I think I need to have a chance to speak.
The demand of the
You will
people.
indeed. Ruth WASSERMAN-LANDE first. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for recognizing that what has happened is indeed horrendous. But the demand of the people is not to murder innocent civilians. It's to bombard specific intelligence-oriented spots that are Hamas headquarters, that are Hamas armament positions.
But hold on, I come back to Yair Lapid's point, talking about eliminating Hamas's leadership there. So if he wants to eliminate Hamas's leadership, you either replace it with something or you have a power vacuum.
We don't want to replace anyone. We do not want this murderous leadership to be there anymore. And that is the demand that the public has on the government and the army.
Yeah, but the question is, how do you go about replacing it?
I'm sorry, just 1 second, please, with your permission. Not to murder, rape, steal, and make the lives of ordinary citizens a nightmare. Are they going to be affected by the bombardments? Of course. You know why? Because Hamas uses them as human shields. It uses schools. It uses hospitals. Why doesn't Hamas, with all the billions that it got from Qatar, have any kind of protection for their citizens? Why does Israel spend billions of dollars on the Iron Dome? We don't want to kill Palestinians.
All right, Mustafa Barghouti.
This is not our mission in life.
Mustafa Barghouti, Yair Lapid saying there should be a return of the PLO instead. Your thoughts?
That's easy to achieve through agreement that can be done peacefully between Palestinians. But unfortunately, today we heard where.
They would put the red carpet.
One at a time, please. Mustafa Barghouti.
Please don't interrupt me, please.
I will try.
I am against killing anybody. I'm against any kind of crime, against Israelis or against Palestinians. But let's see the reality. What we've just heard by some of your guests is blunt racism, claiming that Palestinians are dehumanized, should be dehumanized, saying bluntly that they should be evicted to Egypt. This is nothing but an act of ethnic cleansing.
But you just said that, Mustafa Barghouti, you just said that the PLO could return to the Gaza Strip. Explain.
Yeah, through agreement between Palestinians. That's not difficult to achieve. But my question here, one of the ways of achieving that is to have free democratic elections, which we didn't have since 2006. Why Israel is opposing that? Why the United States is opposing free democratic elections? And it's not true that Hamas would get majority if we had elections. We would have had a more pluralistic... Don't interrupt me, please. Don't interrupt me. Enough is enough. Why are you used to interrupting other people? I think you're behaving in a very unacceptable way.
Let's try to have a civil conversation here because the clock is ticking.
Please stop her from interrupting me, please. This woman cannot stop talking.
That's right.
So you're Mustafa Barghouti, you're positing that there could be elections in both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank?
Absolutely. And it is not true. Please don't interrupt me. Enough is enough. Don't let me use bad words, please. Palestinians can have free democratic elections like Israelis do. This is our right. And if we have free democratic elections, it would be neither Hamas nor Fatah that will get a majority, nor us. It will be a truly pluralistic system. That is the kind of democracy we are aspiring to. And let me say to you that this cannot happen when people are bombarded in Gaza. You speak about elective bombardment. Does that are the 140 children that were killed so far by Israeli airstrikes are they also Hamas? Or are the women who are killed Hamas? Or the ambulance drivers who were driving ambulances are also absolutely acceptable targets? Of course not. The reality here, you asked about what can happen. I want to respond to your question, not
All
to
right,
debate
so
with her.
there is
Your question about what can happen is one of two possibilities. Let me explain them. The first possibility, which is the best one, the most peaceful one, is immediate ceasefire, de-escalation immediately, immediate exchange of prisoners, and then opening a road to real peaceful solution. The other possibility is that Israel will go into a ground operation, which will lead to an eruption of a conflict in the north, and Israel will find itself in war also with Hezbollah. More Palestinian and more Lebanese and more Israeli victims will fall. That is wrong. If Israel goes into the direction of evicting Palestinians from Gaza Strip, conducting ethnic cleansing, this will lead to an uproar in all over the Arab world. Israel will lose even every peace agreement they have concluded with anybody. That is a very wrong way. That is a very dangerous way. I repeat, we want real peace, and real peace means accepting us as equal human beings, accepting the rights of Palestinians in a way that is similar to every other people, accepting that we Palestinians have the right to be free, have the right to be independent, have the right to have democracy.
We have breaking news now with Hamas saying Israel has confirming what Iris Makler was reporting for us earlier, that Hamas saying Israel has killed 2 of its senior members in Gaza strikes. The peace table, we're not there yet. What is also happening fast in Israel is perhaps a change in government. In his Monday night address on national television, Prime Minister Netanyahu extending a hand to his opponents.
The people are united, and now the government needs to unite. I'm calling on the leaders of the opposition to create a national unity government immediately, without precondition, as it was established with Menachem Begin on the eve of the Six-Day War.
Dor Harlap, that was a call issued by the opposition last weekend. Do you see that unity government happening anytime soon?
Yes, as far as I understand, the unity government will be today, or maybe tomorrow, and maybe in 2 days from now. But that's not the point. The point is that we are all, put aside the small political navigations. We, as a nation, we are, as a people, we are united. We are not willing to live aside of these murderers, these Nazis. This is terrible. We cannot stand that anymore, and we are all
Will the government
by
include far-right elements that stoked hatred?
This is, first of all, there will be a small cabinet of war, which will include specific people, and I don't accept your call about that.
Well, one of the criticisms that's been leveled is that many in the cabinet leading up to the Saturday's attack were more interested in what was happening in West Bank settlements than protecting the border in the south.
That's not true. Everybody here in the government cares a lot about all the people of Israel. This is something ridiculous to say, okay? Even from this party that you are talking about, one of the people of the parliament member just left everything and got himself drafted to the reserves to go and fight in the south and help save some more people from this crazy terror attack that the people from Gaza and Hamas are trying to do and had been done.
Robert Parsons, one final point because we're running short on time.
If I could just take us back a little bit to where we were before you went to the news flash. The question really now is, facing the Israeli government, whether it's a coalition or what it is what they do next. They have quite obviously at the moment, the moment is they feel they want retribution. One can understand why they would want retribution. But how do you go about doing this without creating further problems for yourself down the road? The ultimate goal surely has to be an Israel and a Palestine where both peoples live in peace together. Are you going to achieve that by going into Gaza with a ground offensive in which thousands upon thousands of people on both sides are likely to be killed, or not? If you decapitate, in the best case scenario, if the Israeli ground forces succeed in decapitating Hamas, the question you have to ask yourself is, are you prepared to stay on in Gaza and administer it yourselves when you withdrew in 2005 because it was unmanageable? And what is going to grow out of what you've decapitated? Are you going to get something worse than what you've already got? So what I'm saying is an awful lot of thought needs to go into this before action is taken.
A lot of scenarios to take into consideration. Ruth WASSERMAN-LANDE, Dor Harlap, Mustafa, BARGHOUTI, Robert Parsons, I want to thank all of you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.